Thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. My first question to you, and this comes from a report that the World Economic Forum put out some time back, and it said federalism is the greatest threat to the future of the EU. We need a stronger Europe that stands united, not new political superstructures. Is the very idea of Europe under threat?
Well, actually, traditional discussion on federalism is not on the agenda at the moment. Instead, what we are witnessing at the moment is a very pragmatic, substance-based integration process. At the same time, when people are criticizing, for instance, EU amongst the other things, and populism is one of the biggest challenge, not only in Europe but also in Europe, our member states, businesses and citizens have asked more integration. It's very pragmatic way of thinking. If I just give you some examples of the areas in which we are integrating Europe more. We are about to create a digital single market. Also, capital market union is a single market project. Energy market at the moment is very fragmented, it's very national, and our member states have asked us to integrate energy market in Europe.
Okay.
Also, member states have asked to set up a better external border control system, and we have done this already now. Member states have asked us to create or deepen defense cooperation, also cooperation on counter-terrorism area. COP21 results must be implemented so that EU faces the challenges in one footing, meaning that we have to create EU-wide rules how to address climate change. For instance, how to regulate a low-carbon transport sector in order to create a level playing field and create better single market in this sector. Also, we are cooperating more in investment sector. Trade policy is very high in our agenda, and circular economy. Just to mention a few areas in which EU is doing more than 2 years ago.
Okay.
So basically, federalism or discussing about federalism is not relevant at the moment. More relevant is to find joint answers to joint problems. And if you asked from me whether Europe will be more or less integrated in 5 to 10 years' time, I would say that certainly more integrated.
What gives you that optimism, especially in the context of what we're seeing happen as far as Brexit is concerned, and the movement towards more right-wing politics across Europe, that there is a sense of economic insecurity that's playing out? What gives you the confidence that we are going to see more integration and not less?
Yeah, it's true that populism is challenging decision-making in our member states. It's sure. We have seen some populistic features also elsewhere, not only in Europe, for instance in the United States or in other parts of the world. And it's certainly a big challenge. But I just listed various topics and issues in which we are further integrating Europe only because member states and citizens and businesses have asked us to do so. So you cannot hear same type of Europhile speeches as you heard some 10 years ago. But this has been replaced by pragmatic approach, trying to address challenges which are too large to solve in national level.
You know, since you're talking about a pragmatic approach and you're talking about challenges, one of the big challenges that faces Europe is the economic problems, which are largely structural in nature.
Exactly.
Now, the idea when the government changed here in India was step on the reform agenda, bring in more reforms that are pragmatic, that are bold, and the similar ask is of Europe at this point in time. So, whether it's lower marginal taxes, tighter access to benefits, more flexible labor force, I mean, those are things that people are now asking Europe to move with. What should we truly expect? How confident do you feel about being able to get any of that done to address some of these structural issues?
Well, I fully agree with you that European economic challenges are more structural in nature than cyclical. That is the reason why our economic economic policy has changed from looking only at the fiscal deficit and debt levels, which are of course very important. We are more than before concentrating on structural reforms. We are advising our member states to do labor market reforms when appropriate, also to reform energy market in order to reduce the energy costs.
But, apologies for interrupting you, but this is stuff that has been on the table for a while now.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know, we've gone through this process of austerity, and there is no political appetite or no political support for higher taxes at this point in time. So when do we start the process of actually addressing the structural reforms that need to be done?
If you look at what our member states have already done, you can easily list a significant amount of structural reforms what the member states have done. For instance, in many countries, pension systems have already been reformed. In some countries, it has not been done. So structural reforms are usually more difficult, politically more difficult than budget adjustment, even though it doesn't make any sense. For instance, reforming pension system, it makes lots of sense, but in many cases, in many countries, it's much more difficult to do than, for instance, raise taxes or cut budget. But anyway, we can see reforms in many member states, but certainly there are much more work to be done in the future. But also, what we can do in the European law is very important, and that's why all those single market projects which I mentioned are very, very crucial. The better and wider and deeper single market we have, more competition we have, more productivity we can gain, etc. And finally, the trade policy is very, very important because it helps us to modernize our economy. We have 19 negotiations going with third countries in trade sector, and we would like to see India on top of the list, because I think it would be very, very helpful for India, but also for Europe, if we had better FTA with India.
You know, since you talked about the India FTA, let me ask you about that. What should we expect, and how soon should we expect any forward movement? It's been stuck for 9 years over wine and automobiles. Has there been any forward movement at all? The Commerce Minister says that negotiations are positive. They've restarted just a short while ago. What can we truly, realistically expect as far as the EU FTA with India is concerned?
As I said, we have 19 negotiations going on at the moment, including Japan, Mercosur. We just finalized a deal with Canada, etc. So our mindset is pro-trade, pro-free trade. It's in our DNA. It's the way we can modernize our own economy. And that is the reason why we would like to resume negotiations with India too. We are ready when India is ready. So this is one of my main messages.
Has India not given you reason to believe that it's ready?
Yeah, I don't want to blame India, but the fact is that India hasn't been as enthusiastic to resume FTA negotiations than EU has been. So we
That's
really
not
want
the impression that the Indian government has given us. So you're saying that India has been less enthusiastic to restart negotiations?
That's right. Also, we want to negotiate with India on investment protection agreements, because it was quite unfortunate that India decided to unilaterally to terminate existing bilateral investment agreements, and it's under. I mean, the negotiations are in our side are exclusively in the European Commission and in the EU level. So, in order to avoid a situation where European investments are not protected at all, it would be very, very good if Indian government put a decision on hold for a time, for a time when we have managed to get a new modern investment protection agreement.
Do you think that this will hold back large ticket FDI into India from the EU? Because we've got several CEOs in this room who've had to deal with and currently continue to deal with arbitration, Vodafone, Kane and several others with the Indian government. Do you think not having a bilateral investment protection agreement and the vacuum that it currently creates, not having one, is going to hold back large ticket FDI from the EU into India?
There's a risk that if we don't have any kind of investment projection agreement, that it has a negative impact to business environment and especially the investment climate in India. So it should be in India's interest to have modern, forward-looking investment protection agreement with us, because the European companies see India as an excellent market, growing market, excellent opportunity, and that's why it's according to common sense that all those fundamental arrangements should be in place when we are promoting investment.
Is this something that you've taken up with the Indian government, the lack
Yes.
of a bilateral investment protection agreement at this point in time? What's the response been?
Well, actually, I will meet Commerce Minister and Finance Minister later today, and these two issues, FTA and investment protection agreement, will be on the agenda, and I truly and sincerely want to encourage Indian government to start negotiations with us on this. As I said, Europe, FTAs and free trade is in our DNA, and we truly believe that it would be very, very helpful also for India to have modern agreements with us.
What are you likely to put on the table to elicit an enthusiastic response from the Indian government on the FTA? Are you likely to redraw some of the earlier positions where there wasn't much of alignment between the EU and India?
Well, actually, we cannot push by rope. It's we need a political will, and of course we have indicated and said it very openly that we are interested in to have FTA with India, and now it's up to India to decide whether they find this useful tool to modernize the Indian economy. We truly believe that it would be very good for Indian development in medium and long term, or also in short term. And first, we should start or restart negotiations, and in negotiations like this, there are always different interests. But we have managed to finalize many other FTAs with many other countries.
What will be non-negotiable?
Well, probably there are something which are not negotiable, but we should start from positive attitude. And start listing what are possible, what are the issues in which we can agree easily, and then in the end game solve the problems.
Okay, so we'll see whether there is in fact forward movement on the India-EU FTA, where we haven't seen any positive action over the past decade almost.